The ad was meant as a joke. At least, that's what Cole Thorne told himself as he folded the newspaper and tossed it onto the table beside his untouched coffee. Wanted, reliable, respectable domestic help for isolated Montana ranch. Must be comfortable with long winters, wild horses, and limited conversation. Good with children, preferably her own. Room, board, and long-term arrangement available. Discretion essential. CT. He hadn't expected a soul to respond out. It was the kind of absurd thing a man did when winter had lasted too long, when the house was too quiet and the wind too loud. It was never supposed to reach England. And yet, 3 weeks later, on a cloudless Thursday, a train arrived at the dusty station in Marlow Ridge, and with it came a woman in a pale wool coat, carrying 2 children and a letter with his name. On it, Cole stood still, boots planted in the dirt, heart thudding like hoofbeats in his chest. She was real. She stepped down slowly, scanning the platform with cautious grace. The boy, no older than 7, clutched her hand like his life depended on it. The girl, a tiny wisp of curls and stubborn cheeks, tucked herself into her mother's side. "Mr. Thorne?" The woman asked, her voice soft but sure. He nodded. "That's me." She handed him the letter, his own, retyped and folded neatly, then added, "I'm Annabel Reed." Silence stretched, broken only by the distant call of a hawk overhead. Cole cleared his throat. "I didn't think anyone would actually come." Her eyes, dark and tired, met his. "We didn't have anywhere else to go." Back at the ranch, things got stranger. Annabel didn't ask for much. She unpacked quietly, kept to herself, and cooked like she'd been born in the kitchen. Her children, though shy, behaved with a wary discipline that made Cole's stomach twist. He had hired a domestic helper, a woman to clean the house, warm the hearth, and maybe fill the silence with a bit of small talk. But what he got was a family, and a deep, gnawing feeling that something wasn't right. That first evening, after the children had been tucked away in the guest room, Cole found her standing by the fireplace, hands clasped. "You know," he said carefully, "I expected an older woman. A widow, maybe, not someone like you." She looked up slowly. "And what am I?" He hesitated. "You look like someone running." Annabel didn't flinch. She simply nodded. "I am." The fire cracked. The wind howled through the chinks in the walls. And somewhere between the silence and the flames, Cole realized he didn't know this woman at all. Not her reasons, not her past, not her name if he was being honest, but he knew something else. The children were afraid of doors slamming too loudly. She kept a knife under her pillow, and she flinched every time someone raised their voice. 3 days later, he found the bruises, faint, yellowing like old shadows beneath her sleeve. She caught him looking. "They're not mine," she whispered. "They're his legacy." "Whose?" he asked. Annabel only said, "The man we left behind." That night, for the first time in years, Cole sat by the fire long after the flames had died. Outside, a storm gathered in the distance, dragging night down over the hills. He had let strangers into his home, but maybe fate had sent her for a reason, and maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the beginning of a mess. It was the beginning of the truth. Cole Thorne had always believed a man's silence could say more than his words, and Annabel Reed was a woman of silences. She never complained, never questioned. She did her work without fuss, keeping the ranch in order with the soft rhythm of someone used to being overlooked. But it wasn't what she did that haunted Cole. It was what she didn't do. She never laughed. She never sat with her back to a window. She never let the children more than a room away. The boy, Henry, was jumpy and quiet, always watching the door. The little girl, Mazie, rarely spoke at all. Cole watched them more than he meant to, noticed how they flinched when boots hit, The porch too hard, how they huddled close to their mother as if she were their shield. And every time he asked himself why, he already knew the answer. Someone had hurt them. Someone had taught them fear. One morning, after checking the horses, Cole returned to the house to find Annabelle scrubbing the kitchen floor again. "You already cleaned yesterday," he said gently. She kept scrubbing. "There's no mess." Annabelle, still scrubbing. He crouched beside her. "What are you trying to wash away?" Her hand stopped. Her knuckles were red, raw, almost shaking. "You wouldn't understand," she whispered. "Try me." She didn't look at him, but her voice was steady. "My husband, Charles, he was a man people respected. Polite, educated, the kind who smiled for the neighbors. But behind closed doors," she swallowed, "he was different. And when he started turning on the children, I knew I had to run." Cole felt his jaw tighten. He'd seen things in his time: war, loss, cruelty, but there was something especially unbearable about a man who heard what he was meant to protect. "You did right," he said. She finally met his eyes. "Then why does it still feel wrong?" That night, Henry asked to sleep with the lamp on. Maisie cried in her sleep. No sound, just tears leaking like ghosts from a wound too deep to name. Cole stood in the hall for a long time, staring at their door. This wasn't what he'd asked for. He'd placed an ad for a housekeeper, not a woman running from scars. Not children afraid of shadows, not a storm he didn't know how to fix, but what had arrived wasn't a mistake. It felt like a calling. The next day, he rode into town. Quietly, without a word to Annabelle, he found Sheriff Maddox at the back of the feed store, sipping bad coffee and reading the Gazette. "You ever hear of a man named Charles Reed? From back east?" The sheriff looked up, squinting. "Reed? Banker, wasn't he? Big reputation. London lad. Bit of a brute, if you believe whispers." "Why?" Cole said nothing, just tipped his hat and walked out. But something in his gut twisted. This wasn't over. When he returned, the house was quiet. Too quiet. "Annabelle?" He called. No answer. He found her in the barn, clutching Maisie, tears streaming down her face. Henry stood by the door, pale and shaking. "He found us," she whispered. "Charles sent a letter. He knows we're here." Cole took the crumpled envelope from her trembling hands. No return address. Just 5 words on a torn scrap of paper. "You can't hide forever." Cole looked up at her, her face white with fear. Her children pressed against her like she was the last safe place on earth. He didn't speak. Not yet, but something inside him shifted. She wasn't just some woman answering an ad anymore. She was his now. And if Charles Reed wanted a fight, he'd have to cross Montana's wildest land, and the man who'd once fought wolves with bare hands to get her back. Cole didn't sleep that night. He sat in the old rocking chair on the front porch, rifle across his lap, eyes fixed on the dirt road that curved into his land. The moon sat low, half hidden behind a band of clouds. Wind stirred the dry grass in restless waves. Inside, the house was still. Annabelle had tucked the children into one bed, refusing to be separated from them. Her eyes, when they met his before retreating to the room, had been raw, not with panic, but with that dangerous calm people find after running too long. She'd stopped running. Now she was bracing. So as he. By morning, the letter lay on the kitchen table like a loaded pistol. Cole picked it up again, rereading the 5 words. "You can't hide forever. No return address. No signature. No mistake." Annabelle came into the room, hair unbrushed, face pale but composed. "I burned it." "From my memory," she said softly, "his handwriting. But when I saw that, I felt it again, like a rope tightening around my neck." Cole folded the paper and tucked it into his jacket pocket. "Then we cut the rope," he said. He started making changes. The ranch had always been open, a place of sky and space and solitude. But now it became something else. He reinforced the barn door, fitted new locks on the windows, oiled the hinges, replaced the broken fence out back where no one ever looked. He didn't speak much while he worked, but Annabelle watched him from the porch, from the kitchen window, from the quiet corners of safety she never quite stepped out of. One evening, she brought him a cup of tea. Not coffee, not whiskey, but something gentle. "I can help," she said. "You already are." It rained that night, hard and steady, washing dust from the land. Thunder rolled somewhere in the west. Annabelle couldn't sleep. She stood at the hearth, wrapped in a shawl, watching the flames dance. Cole entered quietly. His shirt was damp, collar open. He'd been out checking the horses. She turned to him. "I keep thinking he'll come at night, that he'll just appear." Cole stepped closer, then let him come. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. "He ruined everything. My voice, my faith, my children's trust. I'm a woman made of broken pieces, Cole. You don't want to pick those up." His voice was low. "Maybe I'm the kind of man who sees the beauty in how they still fit." The silence between them turned warm, charged, like kindling waiting for fire. Annabelle took a breath. "I haven't let anyone touch me in years, not even kindly." Cole didn't move. "Then I won't ask to touch you. Not until you want me to." She looked down, then up, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them. "I think I will, one day." He nodded once. "Then I'll wait." "You're worth that." The next morning brought something worse than silence. News. Sheriff Maddox rode out with a telegram in hand. Found on the wire at the Marlow Ridge station. A man fitting Charles Reed's description had been seen in Spokane, asking about a woman with 2 children heading east. He was closer than anyone expected. Annabelle read the words and said nothing, but Cole noticed the way her fingers trembled. As she passed the paper back, "I won't let him near you," he said. She looked at him, really looked. "Why?" "Because you don't belong in fear anymore." That night, as the children slept and the storm outside grew darker, Cole opened the door to her room. He didn't step in, just placed a lantern on the floor. "In case you need light," he said. And turned to walk away, but Annabelle's voice stopped him. "Cole." He turned. She swallowed. "Sit with me a while?" And so he did, not as a savior, not as a protector, but as a man finally brave enough to feel something deeper than duty. And as the fire crackled between them and the storm pressed against the walls of the old ranch house, something new and fragile bloomed in that silence. Trust, and the kind of love that begins with no promises, only presence. The days passed quieter now, but it was the kind of quiet that hummed with unspoken wait. Cole had always appreciated silence. It suited his land, his nature, but this silence was different. It was the quiet of breath held too long, the quiet before something broke. Annabelle moved like a woman trying not to be noticed. She kept the children busy with reading lessons and helping in the kitchen. She swept the porch twice a day. She smiled when spoken to, but never too long, never too warmly. Cole noticed every bit of it. One afternoon, as the sun leaned westward, casting golden light across the open fields, Cole found Henry alone in the barn, hiding behind the hay bales. "Everything all right, son?" he asked gently. Henry didn't answer straight away. Then, without looking up, he said, "Mom cries at night. Real quiet so Maisie won't hear. But I do." Cole sat beside him. "It's all right to cry," Henry sniffed. "She says we're safe now. But I still see him in my dreams. And sometimes I think she does too." Cole placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "He can't get to you here." "I'll make sure of that." Henry looked up. "Promise?" Cole nodded once. On my life. Later that night, Annabel stood by the fence, her shawl wrapped tight against the rising wind. Cole joined her, bringing 2 mugs of tea. She took one wordlessly. He didn't speak for a while, just let the wind carry their thoughts into the dark. Then finally, the boy saw. You cry. She closed her eyes. I try not to. But sometimes it slips out. Cole nodded slowly. He asked me if I'd protect you. All of you. What did you say? I gave him my life. She turned, eyes glinting with something soft. You're kind, Cole, but you don't know the whole story. Then tell me. For a long moment, she didn't move. The air between them shifted, not heavy now, but tender, fragile. And then, finally, she spoke. Charles wasn't just cruel, she began. He was powerful, respected, came from a line of men who bought their silence with money and charm. He never hit me where anyone could see, never shouted in front of friends. Always smiling, always proper, the perfect gentleman. Her voice broke slightly. He wanted a son more than anything. When Maisie was born, he changed, said I'd failed him. Started staying out late, started drinking. Then came the bruises, the blaming. When Henry tried to stand up for me, her voice cracked. She pressed a hand to her mouth. Cole didn't touch her, not yet. Just stood beside her, solid and still. I knew I had to get out. But he threatened me. Sighed he'd take the children if I ever ran. Said no court would believe me. He had everything, Cole. Reputation, lawyers, money. And you? She let out a bitter breath. I had a night train, a forged letter of reference, and desperation. She turned to face him now, eyes shining. When I saw your advert, I didn't think. I just wrote. I didn't care who you were, only that it was far away, somewhere no one would think to look. And now? Cole asked softly. She hesitated. Now I'm scared, not just of Charles finding us, but of feeling safe again, of hoping. Cole reached out this time, slow, steady, and gently took her hand. You don't have to hope all at once, he said. Just enough to make it to tomorrow, she nodded once. That's all I've ever wanted. Inside, Maisie had climbed into Cole's old armchair and fallen asleep with a book in her lap. Henry lay curled at the foot of the rug like a pup seeking warmth. The fire burned low. Annabel paused in the doorway, eyes sweeping the scene. This isn't how I imagined. It, she whispered. A stranger's ranch, 2 children asleep like they've lived here forever. You, Cole stepped beside her. It wasn't how I imagined it either. Then he leaned closer, his voice low. But it's becoming everything I didn't know. I needed. Outside, the wind picked up, and with it, the rustle of hooves far off in the hills. Neither of them heard it yet, but danger was drawing closer. With a face from Annabel's past and fury in his blood, and when he arrived, he wouldn't be knocking. It was a morning like any other, crisp, still, with the scent of frost in the air. The kind of Montana morning where the sun rises slowly over the hills and touches everything with gold. Cole was out in the fields, mending a broken gatepost. Henry followed him everywhere now, eager to help, eager to belong. Annabel watched from the porch, her hands wrapped around a warm mug. Maisie asleep in a blanket just behind her. She had started to smile again. Not all the way, not fully, but enough. And then they heard the engine. A car. Out here, that meant one thing, a stranger. Cole turned first, his body tensing before he even saw the dust trail in the distance. By the time the black car appeared over the ridge, he had Henry behind him, hand on the rifle slung across his back. Annabel stood, frozen, mug slipping from her fingers and shattering on the porch boards. "No," she whispered. "No, not here." The car rolled up slowly, too slow, confident, entitled. A man stepped out, dressed in a long gray coat, polished boots untouched by mud, and a hat angled low. His face, clean-shaven, handsome, hollow. Cole didn't need to ask Charles. Reed had found them. He looked at Annabelle first, his expression cold, unreadable. Then his gaze slid to the children and lingered. "Anna," he said smoothly, like nothing had passed between them but polite silence. "You look well." She took a step back. "You're not welcome here," Cole said firmly, stepping between. Them. Charles arched a brow, amused. "I'm here for my wife and my children." "You've no right," Annabelle said, voice trembling. "You lost that when you laid a hand on them." "I never laid a hand on the children," Charles said, sharply. "Not where it mattered." Cole's fist clenched. "Get off my land." But Charles wasn't a man easily rattled. He pulled a folded legal document from his coat and held it up. "I filed for full custody. I have money, power, friends in all the right places." "And Anna?" "She ran. She forged papers." "That's kidnapping in 3 states." He stepped closer. "You think a dusty ranch and a cowboy with good intentions can stand up to London courts?" Cole didn't blink. "We'll see." Annabelle reached for Cole's arm, her voice barely audible. "He'll take them, Cole. He always wins." He turned to her, steady. "Not this time." She looked into his eyes, saw the promise there. Not just of protection, but of something deeper. Belief that no one had ever believed her before. And now someone did. That night, the ranch burned with tension. Charles had been told to leave by sundown. He hadn't. He sat in his car at the edge of the land, watching, waiting. Inside, Annabelle packed a bag she hoped she'd never need again. "I can't let him win," she whispered to Cole. "But I don't want to run anymore." "Then don't," Cole said. "Let me stand." "But what if he takes them?" Cole paused, then stepped closer. "Then he takes me too, because I won't be anywhere else." Just before midnight, the headlights disappeared. Charles had driven off, but they all knew this wasn't over. Not legally. Not quietly. But something had changed. Annabelle didn't unpack the bag. She placed it in the cupboard, then crawled into bed beside her children. And when she closed her eyes, for the first time in years, she felt brave, because she wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for a future. Outside, Cole stood watch again, rifle across his lap. Eyes on the road. He didn't need words. He had everything to protect now, and nothing, not even the law, would take it from him. 3 days after Charles Reed's visit, a plain brown envelope arrived by post. No signature. Just a typed return address in Missoula and the heavy feel of something final. Cole opened it with Annabelle standing beside him. Custody petition. Legal summons. Demand for the immediate return of Henry and Maisie. Read to their father. Annabelle's breath caught as she read. "Immediate return?" she whispered. "They don't even want to hear me out?" Cole scanned the rest. "He's making you look like a fugitive. Claims you vanished with the children, forged a reference letter to come here, and endangered them by hiding in a remote region with no formal schooling or medical oversight." Annabelle pressed a hand to her mouth. "He's twisting everything. Everything." "I know," Cole said. "And we'll untwist it." That night, after the children were asleep, she found Cole at the kitchen table, poring over the documents. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. "I do." She sat across from him. "You didn't ask for this fight." He looked up, eyes steady. "I asked for someone to help warm this house. Instead, I got someone worth protecting." "That's not a mistake, Annabelle. It's a calling." Her voice wavered, What if I lose? Then we fight again. Until you don't. The following days were full of things she hated. Solicitors, statements, paper trails, court documents she had to sign with shaking hands. She had to explain what Charles had done with dates, with details. Had to speak about bruises she'd hidden and lies she'd told herself to survive. At one point, she broke down while describing the night she ran. I waited until he passed out. Took only one suitcase. I had to leave everything behind. Even my grandmother's locket. It was on the bedside table. Cole reached across the desk, his hand covering hers. You saved what mattered. Yourself, the children. The rest was just things. Sheriff Maddox agreed to testify. He'd seen enough bruises, enough fear, to know truth when it stood in front of him. The schoolteacher in Marlow Ridge offered her word too, saying Henry had bloomed in the quiet of the ranch, and Maisie, once mute, now giggled when she painted. But Charles had something more powerful: status, money, records, and the law. A court date was set. Missoula, Cole said quietly, folding the letter. 10 days. 10 days to prove she wasn't a criminal. 10 days to prove she was a mother. One evening, as thunder rolled faintly in the hills and the fire crackled low, Annabel stepped into Cole's room. He looked up from the book in his lap, surprised, and then not surprised at all. I'm not running anymore, she said. I know. I'm still afraid. So am I. She crossed the floor, barefoot, her eyes never leaving his. You've given me back more than safety. You gave me a place to breathe again. A place to believe. And in that moment, something shifted. Not like lightning, not like fire, but like rain after a long, cruel drought. She touched his hand. He didn't flinch. And when she leaned in, he met her halfway. It wasn't about passion, though there was that. It was about trust. Two people stitched together by fear and slowly, impossibly, learning how to love again. When she laid her head on his chest, Cole closed his eyes and whispered, You won't face him alone. She whispered back, You already made me strong. Enough not to. Outside, a barn owl swept across the fields. Inside, a woman who'd once thought herself broken slept in the arms of a man who never once asked her to be whole, only true. And in 10 days, they'd fight not just for the children, but for the family they'd become. The courtroom in Missoula was colder than Annabel expected. Wide windows, pale light, and polished wood. Beautiful in a way that felt sharp, like a place designed to break people quietly. Cole sat beside her in his best jacket, freshly shaved. Calm on the outside, but she could feel it in his posture. He was wound tight as barbed wire. Henry and Maisie stayed at a friend's house in town, unaware of how much depended on this one day. Annabel had barely slept. Charles was already seated. When they arrived, sharp suit, smug smile. His solicitor, a gray-haired man with polished cufflinks, leaned in to whisper as they walked past. Cole nodded to the judge. The courtroom was small, but the tension was vast. Today wasn't just about custody. It was about history. And who got to rewrite it? The proceedings began. Charles's solicitor painted a portrait of a desperate woman, unstable and emotional, who had kidnapped her children and fled across the Atlantic under false pretenses. He presented school records, bank statements, photos of a polished home in Kensington. She made no effort to seek legal custody, he said. She vanished. That is not the act of a responsible mother. It's the act of a fugitive. Cole sat still, but Annabel saw his hand tighten into a fist on his knee. Then came her turn. Annabel stepped up, legs shaking slightly, and faced the court. For a moment, her throat closed. Then she looked at Cole, steady, patient, with nothing but belief in his eyes. She took a breath. My husband, she said quietly, is very good at appearing kind. A murmur rippled through the room. She continued, he never left bruises where they could be seen. Never shouted in public. He gave flowers after hitting me, told me I was forgetful, unstable, ungrateful, and I believed him. The judge leaned forward slightly. I stayed for years because I didn't think I was allowed to leave. But when he began turning that cruelty towards our children, when I found Henry hiding in a cupboard because he dropped a glass, I knew it had to end. She lifted her hand. I ran to save them. Yes, I lied to get away. Yes, but I did not kidnap them. I rescued them. Then, the moment no one expected, the door at the back of the courtroom opened. Sheriff Maddox stepped in, and he wasn't alone. Behind him walked Margaret Whitby, Charles's former housekeeper from London, flown in that very morning, thanks to Cole's quiet efforts and deep pockets. Margaret took the stand. In a trembling voice, she described the things she'd seen: Charles's temper, the silence in the house, the bruises covered with scarves, the broken toys hidden in the bin. Never said anything because I was afraid, she confessed. But when Sheriff Maddox called and told me Anna was alive, I couldn't stay quiet any longer. Charles's solicitor tried to object, but the judge silenced him with a look, and Charles, once so smug, now sat pale, jaw-locked, lips tight. When it was over, the judge called for recess. In the hallway outside, Cole wrapped his coat around Annabelle's shoulders and looked her in the eye. You did it, he said. She shook her head. We did. He leaned closer. I've never been prouder of anything in my life. She blinked quickly, fighting tears. Do you think we'll win? I think we already have. An hour later, the ruling came. Temporary full custody to Annabelle Reed, with no visitation allowed until a full investigation into Charles's conduct was complete. The courtroom didn't erupt in cheers, but inside her chest, Annabelle felt something she hadn't in years: freedom. That night, back at the small house they'd rented for the hearing, the children ran to her, unaware of what had truly happened. Henry asked if they could go back to the ranch soon. Maisie asked if Cole would be coming too. Annabelle knelt down, kissed them both, and said, Yes, we're going home, all of us. Cole, standing by the door, caught her gaze. Home. It wasn't just a place anymore. It was him. Autumn had begun to settle into the Montana hills, coloring the trees in shades of burnt gold and rust. The mornings were crisp, with breath turning to mist and birds flying lower to the ground. It was the kind of season that made you feel both grateful and a little wistful, like something had ended, and something better was about to begin. Annabelle stood on the porch of the ranch house, her arms wrapped around a mug of tea. Inside, Maisie was humming softly while Henry read aloud from a storybook. The house, once only Cole's, was now theirs. It felt lived in, warm, safe. For the first time in years, her shoulders weren't tense. She didn't startle at every unexpected sound. She laughed now, small natural laughs that crept out between sentences like shy birds returning to a once silent tree. And when she laughed, Cole listened like it was music. The court had ruled in her favor. Charles had been warned officially and thoroughly that any further attempt to contact her or the children would be met with legal action. He hadn't written again. His silence, this time, was exactly what she'd prayed for. Margaret Whitby had returned to London, but not before leaving a letter in Annabelle's hands. It read only, You saved them. You saved yourself. Be proud, be loved. She tucked it in a drawer beside a photograph of her mother and a locket she thought she'd lost but had since been found at the bottom of her old suitcase, wrapped in one of Maisie's dresses. A small miracle. One evening, after dinner, Cole took Annabelle's hand and led her outside to the barn. What are we doing? She asked, smiling. He just said, Come on, and pushed open the doors. Inside, the old lanterns glowed. Soft music played from a dusty old radio, and the barn floor had been cleared of hay. In the center, 2 glasses sat on a barrel beside a plate of fresh cornbread. She turned to him, half laughing. "What is this?" "I realize something," he said, stepping closer. "We never danced." Her face flushed. "I haven't danced in years." "Then it's time." He held her gently, not like someone trying to claim her, but someone honored to be allowed close. They swayed in silence, surrounded by the quiet rhythm of night settling in. The crickets sang softly, and the breeze crept in through the cracks in the wood. Her head rested against his chest, and for a while it felt like time didn't matter. Just the beat of his heart and the warmth of his hand in hers. "I used to dream of being rescued," she whispered. "But you didn't rescue me. You waited, you listened, you saw me." His voice was low. "I didn't want a woman to save. I wanted a partner to build with." She pulled back slightly to meet his eyes. "Do we get to build now?" He smiled, that slow, rare smile that lit his whole face. From the ground up, they didn't rush. There were no grand declarations, no rings just yet. But love was in every shared task, every glance across the table, every story read. To sleepy children, every night they sat side by side on the porch watching the stars. Maisie stopped sleeping with the lamp on. Henry started calling Cole Dad, just once at first, then every day, and Annabelle? She let herself dream again, not of escape, but of belonging. Spring came early the next year. With it came new animals on the ranch, new routines, and new joy. One morning, Annabelle found Cole in the field, brushing down a young foal. He looked up and smiled. "Come meet her." "What's her name?" He tipped his hat back. "Hope." Figured she needed a strong one. Annabelle reached out and stroked the foal's neck. The horse blinked up at her, curious, calm, trusting. "Fits her," she said softly. Cole looked at her. "Fits you too." That night, they stood on the porch again, hand in hand, watching the last pink light of the day disappear behind the hills. "I thought love was something other people got," Annabelle said. He squeezed her hand. "You were wrong." She turned her face toward his and whispered, "I'm glad I was." The ranch, once quiet and lonely, now echoed with life. Laughter, footsteps, stories being written, not erased. They weren't a perfect family, but they were whole. And as the stars came out, sharp and clear in the vast Montana sky, Annabelle knew something with a peace so deep it brought tears to her eyes. She had finally come home, and this time no one could take it from her.